The American flag snapped sharply in the wind, its red and white stripes glowing under the morning sun as Daniel Carter drove the last nail into the pole. He stepped back, his calloused hands resting on his hips, and smiled, the kind of smile that only comes from decades of pride. But across the street, behind the pristine curtains of his McMansion, Gregory Hargrove's lip curled in disgust. Another violation. By noon, the envelope was taped to Daniel's door. Final notice: remove unauthorized flag display or face $500 daily fines. Daniel's grip tightened around the paper. He had survived 2 tours in Iraq, buried friends under this very flag, and now some suit in an HOA office thought he could bully him into taking it down. Lisa's voice floated from the kitchen, tense but gentle. "Danny, maybe we should just—" "No." His voice was quiet, final. The flag stayed. That evening, Gregory stood on Daniel's porch, his polished shoes gleaming under the porch light. "Rules are rules, Mr. Carter," he smirked, tapping his clipboard. "Unless you'd like to explain to your wife why they're seizing your pension." The threat hung in the air like gunpowder. Daniel's jaw clenched, but before he could speak, Lisa's hand settled on his arm. Her eyes said everything: "Pick your battles." Gregory strolled away, smug, unaware that Daniel had already made a call. Somewhere in the darkness, engines rumbled to life. The fine sat on the kitchen counter like a live grenade, its bold red letters screaming, "Pay immediately." Daniel ignored it, stirring his coffee with deliberate calm while Lisa hovered by the window, her reflection tense in the glass. "They won't stop at fines, Danny," she murmured. Outside, the flag rippled defiantly, a silent protest against the manicured conformity of the neighborhood. Gregory wasn't done. By noon, a second notice arrived, this time with a typed list of escalating threats: liens, frozen accounts, eviction. Daniel's laugh was sharp, humorless. "They think paperwork scares me." But Lisa's hands trembled as she unfolded the letter. This wasn't just about the flag anymore. The HOA had buried people for less, foreclosed homes, shattered reputations. That night, Daniel stood in the glow of the porch light, staring at the stars through the flag's stripes. Memories surged, sand under his boots, the weight of a fallen comrade's dog tags, the way they draped the same flag over coffins. A car slowed outside, and for a heartbeat he thought it was Gregory coming to gloat. But it was just Mrs. Calloway from down the street, an elderly widow who pressed a casserole into his hands. "My husband flew in Vietnam," she whispered. "They'll regret this." The next morning, the neighborhood Facebook group exploded. Gregory had posted a photo of Daniel's house, circled in red, "Blight on OUR community." Comments poured in, some calling Daniel a hero, others demanding his eyesore be removed. Then the knock came. Not Gregory this time, but a sheriff's deputy, hat in hand. "Mr. Carter, they've filed for a court order." Lisa's breath hitched. Daniel reached for his phone, scrolling to a number he hadn't dialed in years. "Major," he said when the line clicked open, "it's Carter. I need a favor." Outside, a gust of wind sent the flag whipping like a battle cry. The phone call lasted less than a minute, but Daniel's shoulders straightened with every word. "Understood, Major," he said before hanging up, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. Lisa stood frozen in the doorway, her eyes searching his face. "What did you just do?" Daniel simply kissed her forehead and walked to the garage, returning with a fresh can of paint. Without a word, he began repainting their mailbox in bold red, white, and blue stripes. Gregory's response was immediate. By sunset, a certified letter arrived: "Notice of lien. Failure to comply will result in immediate foreclosure proceedings." The paper shook in Lisa's hands as tears welled in her eyes. "They can't do this," she whispered. Daniel kept painting, his strokes deliberate. "Let them try." That evening, the neighborhood watch group gathered outside their home, some holding signs of support, others filming the violation for the HOA records. A young couple approached Daniel hesitantly. "Sir, our son's in basic training right now," the husband said. "We'll take whatever fine comes for this." They raised their own flag the next morning. Gregory's fury knew no bounds. At the emergency HOA meeting, his voice boomed through the clubhouse. "This is anarchy. If we let Carter win, every veteran will think they're above the rules." The board voted unanimously to begin eviction. The papers would be served at dawn. As midnight approached, Daniel sat alone on the porch, the flag casting moonlit shadows across his weathered face. He remembered Fallujah, the deafening silence before battle, the way his platoon would check each other's gear one last time. This was no different. Some fights weren't about winning, they were about standing. Inside, Lisa packed photo albums into a cardboard box, her tears leaving dark spots on the cardboard. The sound of distant diesel engines rumbled through the night air, but neither of them noticed. Not yet. Dawn broke with an unnatural stillness, the kind that comes before storms. Daniel stood at the window, watching the first pink streaks of sunlight touch the flag that had cost him everything. Lisa slept fitfully on the couch, exhausted from packing their lives into boxes. Then the ground began to tremble. At first it was just a vibration in the coffee mug, ripples disturbing the black surface. Then the pictures on the walls rattled. By the time Lisa jerked awake, the whole house was shaking. "Earthquake," she gasped, but Daniel was already striding to the door, his face alight with knowing. The street looked like a war zone, but instead of destruction, there was order. 6 Humvees in perfect formation idled at the curb, their diesel engines growling. Soldiers in full combat gear stood at parade rest. And at the center, a steely-eyed woman with Major's oak leaves on her collar marched up the walkway as neighbors spilled from their homes in pajamas, phones raised to film the spectacle. Gregory came sprinting down the sidewalk, tie flapping over his shoulder. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, voice cracking. Major Shaw didn't even glance at him, handing Daniel a crisp salute before turning to the crowd. "Attention residents of Pine Ridge Estates," her voice carried like artillery fire. "This land was deeded in 1946 to the Veterans Administration. Your HOA has no legal standing." A private stepped forward with a worn leather binder, flipping it open to reveal yellow documents stamped with government seals. Gregory's face went slack. That's impossible," he sputtered. Major Shaw's smile was colder than the morning air. "Private, read the relevant statute." As the soldier's voice boomed through the street, detailing decades of unpaid federal land leases, a second revelation unfolded. Sheriff's deputies arrived, not to evict Daniel, but to arrest Gregory for fraud. "Embezzlement of HOA funds," one deputy announced, snapping cuffs on the whimpering man. 14 counts. The neighborhood erupted. Mrs. Calloway whooped like a teenager. The young military parents embraced, their flag snapping proudly overhead. But Daniel just stood at attention, tears cutting through the morning chill as Major Shaw leaned close. "Sergeant Carter," she said softly, "we never leave a man behind." From his porch, Daniel watched the convoy depart hours later, their job done. His flag flew higher than ever, its shadow stretching across Gregory's empty mansion like a promise kept. As the dust settled, the real victory became clear, not just for Daniel, but for every veteran who'd ever been told to sit down and stay quiet. The barbecue grills firing up down the street signaled a new battle had begun, the fight to remember. The smell of charcoal and sizzling burgers filled the air as the entire block transformed into an impromptu street party. Neighbors who had avoided eye contact for weeks now carried folding chairs and coolers toward the Carters' driveway, their laughter mingling with the twang of country music. Lisa wiped her eyes as she pulled tray after tray of cookies from the oven, the same ones she'd baked for their farewell party just yesterday. At the center of it all stood Daniel, accepting handshakes and backslaps with quiet humility. The young soldier's father pressed a cold beer into his hands. "They're calling it the Veterans Revolt on Facebook," he grinned. 3 other HOAs got served with VA notices this morning. Across the street, workers were already removing the Pine Ridge Estates sign, revealing the original weathered marker beneath. "Camp Liberty Veterans Resettlement 1946. Major Shaw returned at noon, this time in dress blues. The crowd fell silent as she presented Daniel with a triangular glass case containing a tattered flag. "This flew over Forward Operating Base Courage in Fallujah on your last deployment," she announced. A collective gasp rippled through the gathering as Daniel's fingers trembled against the glass. He didn't need to say what everyone knew, that was where he'd earned his Purple Heart. Children darted between lawn chairs waving miniature flags, their shrieks of joy piercing the humid air. The neighborhood's oldest resident, a Korean War vet in a wheelchair, insisted on raising the ceremonial first burger to Daniel. "You woke us all up, son," he croaked, tapping his Coke can against Daniel's beer bottle. Even the sheriff made an appearance, handing Lisa a stack of paperwork, the official dismissal of all HOA fines and liens. As twilight painted the sky in patriotic hues, the block took on a magical quality. Strings of red, white, and blue bulbs flickered to life. Someone produced sparklers. The young soldier's mother approached Daniel hesitantly. "We're starting a neighborhood veterans assistance fund," she said. "Gregory embezzled over $200,000. We want you to help decide how to use what's recovered." Daniel looked around at the sea of faces, former strangers now bound by something deeper than property lines. The flag above them caught the evening breeze, its shadow stretching protectively over the entire street. Lisa slipped her hand into his as the first fireworks burst overhead, their explosions echoing like distant artillery. But this time, the only thing falling from the sky was light. The fireworks faded, but the glow remained in the laughter echoing down the street, in the way neighbors lingered long after the food was gone, and most of all, in the steady flame of respect that had been rekindled in every heart present. Some victories couldn't be measured in court documents or dollar amounts, but in the quiet understanding passing between people who finally remembered what really mattered. The last embers of the barbecue glowed like distant campfires as Daniel stood alone beneath his flag, its fabric whispering secrets to the night wind. Across the street, the dark windows of Gregory's mansion reflected the stars empty now, just like his threats. Somewhere in the darkness, a cricket chirped, the sound blending with the distant hum of a car engine as the final guests departed. Lisa appeared beside him, slipping a worn army jacket over his shoulders. "Cold?" she asked, though she knew the shiver running through him had nothing to do with the temperature. Daniel's calloused fingers brushed the glass case containing his battle flag, tracing invisible scars beneath the surface. That tattered cloth had flown over blood and sacrifice, just as this new one now flew over redemption. Down the block, a child's laughter floated through an open window, the young soldier's son, no doubt begging for 5 more minutes before bed. The sound carried the promise of tomorrows, where no veteran would ever feel like a stranger in their own neighborhood again. Mrs. Calloway had already organized a committee to convert the old HOA office into a Veterans Resource Center. Daniel exhaled slowly, watching his breath curl toward the stars. Some battles ended with explosions and medals. Others concluded like this, in the quiet understanding between husband and wife, in the weight of a flag's fabric between fingertips, in the unspoken vow that no one would ever make the mistake of disrespecting this community's veterans again. The camera would linger here in the YouTube video, just long enough for viewers to catch the moisture in Daniel's eyes before he turned to Lisa with a smile that said everything. The final shot would pull back slowly, the flag standing sentinel over the peaceful street, its edges blurred by the same wind that once carried the sound of approaching Humvees. Fade to black. Then white text. Sometimes the bravest battles are fought without firing a shot. The silence after the story ended would be just as important as the words themselves, space for the audience to remember their own Daniels, their own flags, their own battles waiting to be won. Because every view, every share, every comment saying, "This happened in my town too," would be another ripple in the water, proof that one stubborn veteran's stand could indeed change everything.